What is involved with directed writing? What does a really good response look like? This video will take you through a past directed writing question, explain what the examiner is looking for in plain English, before giving you some invaluable tips for your own responses. It's going to be to the point and incredibly useful. Stay tuned and watch Schofield on Shakespeare. Here is an at-a-glance guide to what is required, taken from the syllabus. Note that you will need to show an understanding of either one or two passages, and that you would need to produce either a speech, letter, or article. So there are only 3 possible text options, unlike for question 3 from paper 1, in which you can also be asked to produce a report, journal, and an interview. I would take this word count with a huge pinch of salt. Remember, paper 2 is nowhere near as time pressured as paper 1. You have a full hour for this directed writing task. I would aim for something more like the 500 words mark. And when you see what they are looking for within the mark scheme, you'll understand why. So 40 marks for this question, and a majority, 25, are for the quality of your writing and whether it sounds right for the task. i.e., it sounds like a letter, speech, or article written by the specified person for a particular audience. Nothing particularly surprising here for a writing mark scheme, although note the emphasis on a wide range of sophisticated vocabulary precisely used, a step above the requirements for vocabulary for descriptive narrative writing, which simply require it to be precise and well chosen. However, the fact that both mark schemes mention the word precise highlights the fact that you can't just dump long, complex words into your piece. They really need to fit, and the piece needs to flow. Concerned about your range of vocabulary? If so, you may find my 3 recent videos on boosting vocabulary helpful. Note the point about a careful structure. Now, how you structure your piece will depend on what the task is and whether you are asked to produce a letter, a speech, or an article. In this video, and for this task, I'm going to write a letter, and I found this structure helpful. Shorter paragraphs are much easier to read and therefore mark. For this question, I would write 7, which includes an introduction at the beginning and conclusion at the end, both short. Notice that I am allocating more words for my own evaluation of the writer's ideas and arguments. But what exactly does it mean to evaluate? Well, it is the first bullet point of the reading mark scheme, which makes reference to evaluating. Although note that overall reading only contributes 15 of the 40 marks. Well, for me, successful evaluating is weighing up a point, probing both sides, poking in a bit of detail. Let me give you an example. Here's a predictable statement to evaluate. COVID-19 has led only to despair and desolation. Let's evaluate this. There is no doubt that this pandemic has caused a great deal of suffering, not only amongst those who have lost loved ones, but also those who have lost their jobs. However, there have been some unexpected benefits. Those in the pharmaceutical and cleaning industries have seen profits soar. Technology has been harnessed so effectively that the majority of us have adapted to socializing online. Indeed, some young people feel that talking to someone online is as enjoyable as meeting in person. So when we evaluate, we probe both sides of a statement. With this example, I talk about the horrible negatives of the pandemic, but the positives as well. Remember, successful evaluation refuses to oversimplify. Why not have a go at evaluating this statement on screen now? Press pause if you would like to do this. The video will resume in 5 seconds' time. The reading mark scheme also requires assimilation of ideas. What does this mean? Well, it means that you don't just copy out the information from the text, but you reproduce it in a logical, organised way. It may mean merging 2 points from 2 separate paragraphs in a piece and summarising the viewpoint concisely within a single sentence. My own model response will give further insight into this. Time to move on to the task. Here's the question. Write a letter to the writer in which you respond to the ideas and arguments in the article. You may agree or disagree with what the writer has written. In your letter, you should identify and evaluate the writer's views. Use your own ideas to support your comments on the writer's views. Base your letter on what you have read in the article, but be careful to use your own words. Address each of the 2 bullet points. Begin your letter, dear sir or madam. Up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer, and up to 25 marks for the quality of your writing. And what has the writer written about? Let's find out. In this humorous newspaper article, the writer voices some of their concerns about what children experience when they go to school. All of us wrap up our children when it's cold. We put them on booster seats in the car and make them wear helmets when they're on a bicycle. We strive constantly to keep them out of harm's way, and then we send them off to school so they can be tortured. I suppose we all think rather naively that school today is exactly the same as school back in our day, except that children are now allowed calculators. I'm afraid not. School today is completely different. There's very little bullying and no smoking behind the bike sheds because there's no time. Not when you need to be fluent in 17 languages by age 4 and you've got those pesky quadratic cosines to finish off by break. I'm not kidding. I do not understand any of my son's maths homework. And what's more, I bet he knows more about advanced mathematics now at the age of 10 than most of the NASA scientists did when they put Armstrong on the moon. My daughter, who already knows Latin better than Julius Caesar, comes home from school at 6 o'clock every night, bleary-eyed from the pressure. But before she can collapse into bed, she has to do 4 half-hour pieces of homework. Supper? Internet? A bit of light texting? Forget it. On the basis that a parent can only be as happy as their least happy child, this makes me pretty miserable. She's not alone either. I read the other day that a 4-year-old child had been diagnosed with stress, and I'm not surprised. Perhaps she'd been made to miss her playtime so she could finish her paper on how the gross domestic product of Iceland was affected by EU fish quotas. A child I know was sent home from school recently with a note saying that by the age of 10 she really should have a rudimentary grasp of quantum physics, and that because she didn't, she must have some extra tuition. Unfortunately, on the back of this hurriedly written note, the teacher had been doing some sums. There was a list of every child who was having extra lessons, how much each parent was paying, and at the end, under the total, he'd written, "Yippee." When I was at school, I remember being told that if I spelt my name properly on the examination paper, I'd be halfway there. Exams were a hiccup in the day, not the be-all and end-all of absolutely everything. Based on those exams, we now have league tables, a handy guide to how well each school performs. But publishing a list of best schools purely on the grounds of academic achievement is idiotic. It tells you nothing. Recently, I made a decision on which secondary school my children would attend. I chose it because I know several people who've been there and they loved it. I chose it because the children I saw mooching from lesson to lesson were mostly smiling. I chose it because it felt right. Of course, I want my children to leave school with a basic academic foundation. But more than that, I want them to learn social skills so they can interact properly with other human beings. I want them to learn to play the guitar. I want them to enjoy school, to have fun. I can't bear the thought of paying a small fortune every year so they can be put on a treadmill. School is supposed to prepare a person for life, not wear them out. This is what we all seem to have forgotten. Yes, we must do everything we can to keep our children safe, but we should also do everything we can to make them happy as well. My recommendation is that you now have a go at producing a full response to this question. You can email me at schofieldonshakespeare@gmail.com if you would like me to send you a PDF exam-style paper. Alternatively, the extract will appear at 5-second intervals following this slide so that you can toggle between the different sections. So, grab a pen and press pause now. How did you get on? Did you produce a deliciously probing response, beautifully written and packed with intelligent evaluation? And just as crucially, did you plan before writing? If you were working just from the YouTube video, then this would have been trickier to do. Nonetheless, aim to annotate the extracts to highlight key points and to make sure that you are combing enough information from the text. You can see the first half of my annotations on screen now. Press pause to scrutinise these. The second half will be shown in 5 seconds time. Here's my response. Dear Sir or Madam, I must say that I enjoyed your entertaining article in the Daily Mail in which you expressed your considerable concerns about the pressures being put on children within schools today. However, I would like to take issue with a number of your points. Firstly, you implied that children suffer due to an overly intensive emphasis on academic achievement. Whilst children do need time to relax and play, they have long holidays and weekend breaks. Within today's ultra-competitive global marketplace, is there not an argument that our children need to learn from an early age the critical importance of sustained hard work? With concern raging over the so-called snowflake generation, is it not refreshing that some schools are ambitious with their curriculum? Your article also implies that children are being burdened with unhelpfully complicated curriculum content. Whilst your references to quantum physics, trigonometry and Latin are clearly intended as light-hearted hyperbole, I'm concerned by the underlying meaning. We have a duty to broaden the minds and horizons of our young people. If a child is capable of learning about waves and particles, why waste their time with repeated doses of Jack and the Beanstalk? Additionally, I was concerned by your inference that teachers may be motivated primarily by money accrued from extra private tuition. Whilst a tiny minority of teachers may seek this additional income source, it is worth emphasising the fact that no teacher enters the profession for financial reasons. Graduates can earn so much more within office-based professions. Teachers genuinely want to make a difference to the lives of young people, and to suggest that they may be manipulating core academic requirements for their own financial gain is clearly ludicrous. I was also alarmed by the breezy way you suggested that bullying and smoking are no longer problems within today's schools. Whilst it is true that there are far fewer smokers today than in past decades, largely due to the government's aggressive stance on advertising and taxation, the rise of social media has arguably resulted in far more bullying, both within school and at home. Indeed, pressure has been applied to social media companies in order to try to address this. However, schools also have a role to play in terms of monitoring and educating. Finally, I felt your targeting of league tables was disproportionate and unfair. Of course, it is true that there is more to a school than academic results. However, given the terrifying rise in unemployment figures across the world due to the pandemic, it is entirely reasonable for a parent to choose a school which is likely to provide their child with an increased chance of respectable, employable examination results. Particularly given the situation facing our world, I would urge you to write more proportionately and use considerably less hyperbole in future articles. Yours faithfully, Christian Schofield. This response would achieve 40 out of 40. Why? Let's probe, starting with the writing mark scheme. Remember that paper 2 is essentially looking to reward interesting, engaging, accurate writing, both for directed and descriptive or narrative writing. Within the section on screen, I aim to do this through 2 consecutive rhetorical questions, which use appropriate, formal sounding phrases such as today's ultra-competitive global marketplace and the topical so-called snowflake generation. These phrases help contribute to a highly effective register for audience and purpose. Within this paragraph, note the wide range of sophisticated vocabulary precisely used. Note also the control over sentence structures and the precise use of a wide range of punctuation, full stop, comma, semicolon, and question mark. How about the top band of the reading mark scheme? Well, continuing with this particular paragraph, note how I have evaluatingly poured scorn on the writer's argument about unnecessary academic pressures by pointing out if a child is capable of learning about waves and particles, why waste their time with repeated doses of Jack and the Beanstalk? In doing so, I am assimilating the point made about quantum physics and doing some humorous exaggeration of my own with the reference to Jack and the Beanstalk. Further evaluation is seen within this paragraph. Note the structure. First, I start off by specifying one of the ideas from the text. However, the much longer part of the paragraph consists of evaluating the writer's dismissal of bullying and smoking. I am prepared to accept his point about the reduction in smoking, but bullying? Nonsense. Within today's world, bullying seems to be far more likely to happen, and clearly that will impact upon schools and children. Of course, examiners don't just have the marking grids to refer to. There is also some indicative content, which gives the examiner some pointers about ideas which pupils might include, and some ideas for evaluation. These will now appear on screen within 5-second intervals. Press pause to read these through and perhaps compare to your own response. Do you have enough of these ideas to get into the top band for reading? So, what is required for directed writing? Well, you need to show the examiner that you can write really well, you can write accurately, you can write engagingly, and you need to show a detailed understanding and probing of the text or texts. I always feel that the very best responses contain the most developed, sophisticated evaluation. And to do that, you sure as hell can't stick to an upper word limit of 350 words. Many thanks for watching Schofield on Shakespeare. Good luck.